All right, 1, 2, 3.
All
You're
right.
on.
Oh my goodness. Hello, everybody. Welcome, friends. I am so honored and truly blessed to be able to have the opportunity to interview one of my dearest friends and a personal mentor of mine in my life and as well as in my business. He is an amazing man. He's a motivational speaker. He's a certified health coach. He's a best-selling author. He is a personal development coach and founder and CEO of Think Life is Different. And he has just written a new book called The 12 Shifts. And it's an incredible book. And Jamil, what's interesting is I met you after a lot of these shifts had occurred in your life. And when I have read this book, I am amazed at the Jamil that you talk about in your book, The Old Jamil. And it's really hard to believe. But you know what? It gives me hope. And I know it's going to give everyone else hope that even if we're in a place in our lives where we're stubborn, pig-headed, all of these things, that we can actually grow through that and learn a lot from that. And so there's hope for all of us because you're an amazing man. And I can't even imagine knowing you then. You've gone through a lot. So anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. So we're going to have fun with this. When I was preparing for the interview, as I mentioned, I just said a prayer. I just said a prayer that, it's not about me, it's not about you, but it's all about, the right message to be heard by the right person and the right people. So that's just kind of the perspective that I have in coming into this interview, that I just know that whoever's meant to hear the things that you're going to say are that's going to happen. So anyway, let's get right to it. So in the 12 shifts, I love this book, and it talks about 12 different mindset shifts that you need to make in order to really bring about transformation and success that you desire in your life. So the concepts in the book have a lot to do with taking personal responsibility. And a lot of times that's something that we do not like to hear. We don't want to hear that message, Jamil, right? And so based on your personal experience, what are some of the reasons why you feel that it's a good idea to kind of embrace these concepts and to take personal responsibility, kind of based on what you have lived through?
Well, that's a great first question. That's deep. That's really deep. Well, first, let me be the first to say that I appreciate you. And it hasn't been that long since you've come into my life. And I think most people that know you, Priscilla, and I've said this a lot of times, fall in love with you. You just have a light and an energy about you. And I said, I got to be around this woman. And we would go on our walks around the Rose Bowl. And, um, I think people want to spend time with people like you who really lift them up. And so I just appreciate you with being a driving force in my life, along with Jeff, and, really getting to know you guys. We're going to be lifelong friends. So just buckle up because you're not getting rid of me. But I think I think the simple answer to your question is, why is it important to do that? It's because I think we want to be happy. I think most of us want to be happy and live life of fulfillment, and we want to, at the end of the day, have peace, and joy. And when in my life, the times where I don't take responsibility for things that are going on, then what happens is I'm now living in a world of wishful thinking. I'm now living in a world of a lot of hopium. I hope things go the way that I want. And if they don't, then if it's someone else's fault, or someone else is to blame, or something else is to blame, now I'm not in control. And the one thing that I wanted to be in control of is my own happiness. And so what I learned through a very traumatic journey is, in order for me to be in control of my own happiness and my own fulfillment, then I need to take that responsibility. I need to put it in my hands, because when I do that, I now can do something about it. But if I'm hoping that it's up to other people, now I'm in a passenger seat of my own life in my own car. And I'm in now of a passive state instead of an active state. And whenever you're passively sitting by, it's going to be frustrating, because now you are waiting for perfect alignment. You're waiting for the stars to align, instead of creating the stars to align. And you can do that once you take that responsibility.
That is awesome. That is a great segue into just talking about particular shifts in your book, because I'm going to touch on the ones that really resonated with me. They all are wonderful. But I'm going to start with one of my favorite shifts that you talk about. And it is you have superpowers, and that you'll never grow into your formidable self by hiding behind and refusing to confront a painful past. And you and I have talked a lot about our pasts, and there's a lot of pain in your past and a lot of pain in my past. And I can only imagine that anyone that's listening to this, they have a lot of pain in their past. And so, what I want you to talk a little bit about is you talk about a clay statue in that shift, and how it applies to finding your superpowers, and how getting past the hurt and chipping off that clay can help us so much find our superpowers in our life. So if you can explain a little bit about that, I love that story about the clay statue.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of people um, who might have that pain. They may be suffering. Oftentimes, we create our own suffering, though, Priscilla. Um, but whether they're having that pain or that suffering, or maybe they didn't have history of difficult things, maybe they had a what they would consider a perfect upbringing. You have superpowers. I wanted the readers to know right away what separates them from every other living creature that ever came before us and will ever come after us. And in order to do that, I made a parallel between the story that you're talking about, which is a story of a golden Buddha. And so centuries ago, you had the Thai who were being invaded by the Burmese, and they knew that they were going to be invaded. And at that time, their most precious relic, their most precious worldly possession was a statue, a 12, 13, 14-foot statue of a golden Buddha made of solid gold. And this thing was priceless. This meant more to them than any monetary value ever could. And in order to sort of protect this Buddha from the Burmese army that was going to come in and overtake the village, what they did was they covered it up with muck, with mire, with dirt, and ultimately they covered it up with clay. And so they did get taken over, they got wiped out. And for centuries, the Burmese never knew that that clay, that statue actually had gold beneath it. And so one of my premises is that that's us. I believe that we're all made of solid gold. I believe that we're created without any flaws, but I believe that over the years, we have a lot of clay that's sort of thrown on us. And so even sitting here, you're looking at me right now, but Jamil's not just sitting here talking to you. A little part of my mama is sitting here talking to you and her influences over me over the years. Part of my dad is sitting here, his ability to run in and out of prison when I was younger, have multiple girlfriends all at the same time. One of my younger sisters is only a month younger than me. Her mother lived right down the street from mine, and Papa was a Rolling Stone. So I got a little bit of him sitting here. I got a little bit of my high school pastors sitting here, my football coaches throughout the years. So all of that is clay. All of that is influences. All of that has sort of layered me to believing certain things that I believe, sort of having limited beliefs that I believe. My propensity to blame might be one of them. And so I wanted us to understand that oftentimes we're doing things because we're not utilizing the one thing, the one superpower that we have, and that's our ability to think, to have consciousness, to have reason. What we usually do is we act out of our subconscious minds, which is the clay that's been given to you and that's been given to me. And we never question it. We just have these habits. For example, one of the pieces of clay that I talk about in the book is my mom is wonderful. She's a wonderful woman. She's a single mother. We grew up on welfare, but oftentimes you wouldn't even know it. I've never known her to have a quote unquote normal job. Um, and one of the things she would say when we were younger is she would say, I love you guys, but you're not going to sit around and use me. Right. And when you hear something like that, thousands and thousands of thousands of times, that now becomes you or what you believe is you, but that's not you. So later in life, when you move into a professional life or you move into a relationship, and now you have this philosophy of if you want love, then that means you got to give something in return because you're not just going to sit around and use me. If you want help from a professional standpoint, then you got to give something in return because you're not going to sit around and use me. And this was one of the ways that I severed relationships. I really suffered in my own marriage. I suffered with business partners because I had this propensity and this philosophy of, y'all ain't just going to sit around here and use me. You think I'm going to do everything? No, that's not how it's getting down. And I didn't realize that that wasn't even me. That wasn't me. And so we got all of these little things that we believe are us that's not truly us. What we've done is we've forgotten that solid gold beneath that clay. And so what I'm encouraging the readers to do is to realize that that's not you. And I start to give them tools on how to start to connect with who are you actually? Like, who are you actually? Who's that gold person that's underneath all that clay that's been dripped all over you for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? And now it's brought you to a place of unfulfillment or not reaching the success levels you can, or even quite ultimately your destiny, because you've been walking around in other people's paradigms instead of being intimate with who you actually are.
Wow. And then from doing that, from chipping off the clay and everything, you're able to reveal really truly what your superpowers are, right?
Yeah, I mean, ripping off the clay, here's your superpower. Your ability to even be aware of when you're thinking in ways that don't even serve you and it's not you. That's your superpower. And most people don't know that they even have that. I didn't. Here's part of it. Something that's silly and you're married and you understand relationships and just in human interactions. I almost got divorced because my wife didn't make the bed. Isn't that crazy? It sounds silly, doesn't it? Now in my house, when you got up, when that house better be clean. Okay. So now when I am in a relationship with my wife and my expectation for her is when we get up, this bed needs to be made. I didn't even know that I was thinking that way. So our superpower is the consciousness to even stop and say, does that even make sense? Like, does that, like, honestly, does that a big deal? Does that make sense? Am I even thinking this? We don't even know that we have that ability. And that is what sets us apart from every other creature.
Absolutely. I love that. It's all about being self-aware. And sometimes that is really, really hard to do. And it's a hard pill to swallow. But when we can do that, it really does lead to a lot of breakthroughs, because I know from personal experience that has been the case with me for sure. So I absolutely love that whole story about the golden Buddha. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, next I'm going to move on to shift 2. Because once again, you talk about taking responsibility and personal responsibility for your life. When I read that the "it isn't my fault" mentality puts us in the passenger seat of our own cars and in our own lives, which you mentioned earlier, that really struck a chord with me, because to me, it brought into light the fact that why it's not a good idea to play the blame game, right? There's a reason for not wanting to do that, not being in that victim mentality, because then we're not the author of our life. And so even though it's fun sometimes to just play that victim, and it's easy, that's the easiest path, is to be stuck there. It is really, really important and key for us to move forward in our lives, to move forward and past that. So you talk a lot about taking responsibility and the concept of E plus R equals O. Can you speak to us a little bit about what that is? What is E plus R equals O, and how when we apply those concepts in our life, how we can be helped?
Yeah. So I took this concept from one of my mentors, a man by the name of Jack Canfield. If anyone's ever read the Chicken Soup of the Soul books. Um, and so from studying with Jack, what he taught me was um, life is life. What happens to you happens to just about everyone. So we all have stuff, and I encourage the listeners to think about what their stuff has been. This year has been coronavirus. This year has been millions of Americans have lost their jobs. This year, husbands have walked away from wives. Wives have walked away from husbands. This year, it's been tornadoes that's ripped through the country. It's been earthquakes. It's been poverty. There's always something. There's something in our lives is called an event. It can be something big, like your spouse just died, or um, um, you didn't have the money, and so they took away your home that you had been paying a mortgage on for 29 years, and you only have one more year to pay off that house, but you couldn't make the payments. So now the bank took your house back. Those are big E's, right? Those are big events. But we also have a lot of small E's in our life, like you open up the refrigerator and the milk falls out and spills all over the floor, or you're walking down the stairs and one of the kids leaves a toy on the stairs and you stump your toe on it. Or in my case, I have many business partners, and maybe a business partner says, I was telling you right before this call, I was supposed to speak with a pretty prominent guy in the personal development space, and he said he was going to call at 9 and he didn't call. That's an E. So what I started learning was E's don't matter. You could just wipe those off the table, wipe them off the piece of paper. Events are going to happen. As long as you're breathing, E's are going to show up in your life. And what they started training me was, how can I take control of my R? And the R is, how am I going to choose to respond to that E? If someone dies in my family, that's an E. Now, what's going to separate Jamil is, how am I going to choose? And I keep saying choose, and I want to put strong emphasis on it because it is a choice. This goes back to superpower number one, that your ability is your own mind. And we have the ability to choose. Right now, it's fall and winter time. The Canadian goose is going to fly south. What if we say, hey, there's a big hurricane that's coming, you guys might want to turn back north? They don't have the ability to choose. They operate off of instincts. Human beings have the ability to choose. We have something called reason and consciousness. The problem is we don't know how to take control of our own R's. And so usually our responses that are in ways that don't serve us. And when we start responding in ways that don't serve us, that brings us to the O, the outcomes. So if we choose the right way to respond, we actually take control of that R with great emotional intelligence and emotional agility, then we always have positive O's, outcomes. If we choose to break down, to blame, to shame, to fall below the line, to be in that victim mentality, or now we're in the hero mentality, or now we're the villain. Oh, I was so good at being the villain and the victim. And when you show up to life as to, why is this happening to me? Someone passed away in my family. Why is this happening to me? The coronavirus has showed up. Why is this happening to me? My job got ripped away. Why is this happening to me? My husband cheated on me. Why is this happening to me? There's too much traffic on the freeway. Why is this happening to me? The internet's not working. Why is this happening to me? The dude didn't call me at 9 o'clock like he said he was supposed to. Why is this happening to me? I spent 40 years putting money in my 401k, and 2009 happened and all my 401k got ripped away because of market crash. Why is this happening to me? That is a low emotional intelligent person. And that's where I spent the majority of my life. And what they start training me on is, how do you start to see it as, how is this happening for me? So my husband cheated on me and left me. How's this happening for me? Coronavirus hit. How's this happening for me? How's this supposed to make me bigger, stronger, better, more sophisticated? Someone close to me died in my family. How is this happening for me? How's this supposed to make me be more, become more, give more, serve more, honor more, study more, earn more, travel more? How's this? Everything is in my favor. That is what it means to take control of that R. That is what it means to take 100% radical responsibility. In my book, I call it doing your own damn push-ups. We allow other people, circumstances, and events to do our own push-ups instead of getting down on that floor and doing our own push-ups. And so throughout my life and my business, my relationship, the whole book is about personal fulfillment in all areas. And what I started learning to do over the last 8 years is take control of that R, respond to it in ways that now bring me positive outcomes. So that is how we have literally resurrected. I've literally resurrected my whole life. Before this journey, I was in a 2-year depression, deep depression. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a deep depression, but when you're in a deep depression, you start thinking ways you're not supposed to, and you start thinking maybe I'm not supposed to be here, and you start ruining relationships. I got laid off from my job, wanted my wife to have an abortion, all sorts of crazy stuff, because I lived in a state of, why is this happening to me? Instead of being emotionally intelligent enough to say, damn, everything's in my favor. I'm so glad that this is happening for me. Once I start to learn how to do that, my outcomes just change overnight. So that's what E plus R equals O is. We all have events, whether it's 400 years of oppression and slavery, that's an event. We all got stuff. That stuff doesn't matter. What matters is, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to show up and respond to it? And if you respond in favorable ways that serve you, then you will have favorable outcomes.
Boy, I love that so much, because I too I struggled with that. And I lived for 5 years of my life. You talk about depression and everything. I lived for about 5 years of my life in the twilight zone, and just in that, why is this happening to me? I just couldn't get past that, Jamil. I couldn't. And I wish so much that I kind of had known about these concepts before. But you know what? I can't do anything about the past. All I can do is move forward into the future and embrace those concepts, because it really does matter how you respond. And then, I find that whatever you're putting out in the universe too, however you're responding, you get more of it. You get more of that frequency and all of that. And so that is absolutely a hard concept to grasp, but one of the most important for sure. So now moving forward with all of these concepts, you have another shift, and it's shift number 4. And we all experience pain in our lives, and that's kind of like this theme that we are talking about, and getting past the pain. And but growth equals pain. And that's what you write about in shift number 4. And that without struggle, there could be no progress. And that within that struggle is the discovery of our own strength, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how that shift occurred in your life, and how has that impacted you?
This was probably, so throughout the book, shift number 10 is my favorite shift, just because of what it means in terms of being able to influence the world. but shift number 4 was my favorite shift to write. Um, because I didn't get it. You know, I didn't get it. Um, I didn't understand that life wasn't supposed to be easy. Does that make sense?
Totally.
I lived under this false pretense that it's supposed to be butterflies and rainbows and hopscotch and lollipops. And
How do we get that? Because I had that same thing. Like life was supposed to be easy, man.
we're delusional. That's why. And it really starts with it starts from um it starts from the infant state. Just think about it. You have beautiful daughter in Emily. Think about when Emily was a baby. When she wanted something, what did she do?
Just cry and until she got it.
Yep. And did she get it?
Yep. You
Yeah,
bet.
didn't she? Of course. And what does that do? That's ease, right?
Yeah.
That's ease. And so it starts from a young age to where we have this false, let me just talk about myself. I have this false pretense that things are supposed to be easy. My marriage was supposed to be easy. I mean, I literally got married because I thought it would make things easy. And I talk about that in the book. And marriage, for anyone that wants to struggle through it, and I say struggle through it because that's what it's going to take. If you want a long lasting, fulfilled, fruitful marriage, then you will have to struggle through it. But I didn't know, you talked about a law right now. You said, I realized that what I put out there, I get back. That is a law of the universe. And so what I started realizing was there's all these laws. And one of the laws is um, just that, is if you want anything to grow and to become more and to reach its maximum capacity, then it will never be easy. But I didn't know that, Priscilla. I didn't know that getting involved in a marriage was going to be hard. I didn't know that starting a business was going to be hard. I didn't know that living a fulfilled life would need to be hard. I didn't know that to grow anything, it would have to suffer first. And because I didn't know that and I didn't expect that, when it did get hard, I crumbled and I fell and I complained and I pulled back and I quit and I blamed. I had a PhD in blame because when things got hard, it's fight or flight. And I ran and I complained and I moaned and I had great friends there that would listen to me. And so along the journey in the last 8 years, what I started realizing was, wait a minute, it's actually the other way around. If you have the desire to do more, to earn more, to become more, to love more, to stretch more, to grow more, then the only way to which you will get that is you have to go through pain, struggle, suffering. That's the only way because nothing's for free. And so in the book, I give these beautiful stories that talk about all these different entities that have to go through challenges, that have to go through struggles. And the same thing is true with our own life. Oh, I hope I didn't freeze here. Uh-oh, lost you. You froze. Hopefully this comes back. Think you're on mute, darling.
Sorry about that, Jamil. My laptop just froze and that was an obstacle, but now I hop back on from my phone and here we are
There it
again.
is. There it is.
Oh,
So this is the perfect segue. So what just happened, that was a challenge, you know, but in order for you to grow, then when these challenges show up, we say, what am I supposed to learn from this? Like, why did that just happen? And how is this supposed to make me become better? And so in all of these challenges, there's this period to allows us to actually get to that next step if we will allow ourselves. And so as I'm building my relationship, when the challenges show up, I stop looking at the challenges as something again that I complain about, and I say thank you. I learn to say thank you. Why? Because I want to move to the next step in my relationship, my business, and my life. And what I started learning was when I complain about those things, I'm actually forfeiting my own blessings and my destiny.
I absolutely love that. And it's all about expectations, right? We expect life to be easy and then we're just so bummed and upset when things go wrong. Like my laptop froze, but thanks to a little bit of that personal development that I've done, I didn't freak out, right? It's an obstacle. And I expect things like that now, whereas before I didn't necessarily expect it. And so when your expectations are, you know what, life is going to give us obstacles, and you know what, I'm going to get freaking past those obstacles when they're thrown at me, rather than life should be easy. And when I get obstacles, it's like, it's a
Mhm.
wonderful new shift in perspective, and I owe a lot of that in my life when I can get there, which is a lot sooner and quicker than I used to. I owe a lot of that to you and your mentorship and things that I've learned from you. And so I'm just so grateful for that, Jamil. All right, so moving on to another one of my really, really favorite shifts. I mean, they're all so good, but this one really resonates with me. And I think that a lot of people that are listening, it's going to help them hear what you say about this. In shift 6, how you discuss fear is rocket fuel. Okay. So many of us, myself included, lived life under fear. And I'm scared to do something. I'm scared to start my own business. I'm scared to, do whatever, fill in the blank, because you're scared of what other people are going to think about you. You're scared that you're not going to be good enough. It's that fear. So a lot of times we just get paralyzed and we don't act because of our fear. So you speak a lot about fear, obviously, in shift number 6. And tell us a little bit about fear and how it's possible to move past it. And once you do, what can happen when you move past that fear? What can happen in your life?
Yeah, so this was an emotional chapter for me to write. I remember working with my book manager, Jordan, and we would do a series of interviews, Priscilla. And when we got on this chapter, um, I actually cried quite a bit on this chapter. And the reason why I cried is because for so long in my life, I allowed fear to run me instead of me running fear. Does that make sense? And I just gotten to a point to where I was tired of being afraid. And I was tired of succumbing to um succumbing to this picture, these things that I would make up in the future that would hold me back from doing the things that I want to do. And listen, I know a lot of people that's watching this might be in the coaching world, the business world, the entrepreneurship world, whatever. I'm talking about little things like fear of having a tough conversation with my wife, right? So like I'm I might be feeling a certain way and I don't know how to communicate it. And so then I just don't say anything. And now I'm pissed off for 30 days because I'm too scared to bring it up. Does this make sense? And of course, that would seep into my business world. Of course, that would seep into even, you know what I learned about fear? This is it never leaves. If you don't bust through it, it will show up in every area of your life, not just in your business life, but the same fear that's controlling your business life. I bet you that's probably plaguing you in your relationship. And that same fear that's controlling you in your relationship, I bet you that's controlling an aspect of your spirituality. And that same fear, I bet you, is getting in the way with how you interact with your kids or the people around you. And that same fear is probably what's keeping you stuck right there. And while you're not going to do the things in the world that you're called to do. And that same fear, you see how I'm saying? So when you don't look this thing in the face and say no more, it's not like it just stops. It never stops. It will never, ever stop. And so in the book, I told a story to where I just made a covenant with myself that I was done with it. And that shift really came on the central coast of California. And I was going into a Walmart. And part of my job is to help people sort of resurrect their lives, get healthy in lots of different ways. And one of those ways is give them the gift of physical health. And so I saw a woman in the store on one of those electric scooters, and she was there with who I assume were two of her grandsons, and she wasn't looking very good. And I wanted to go up and talk to her and just make a connection, let her know if she ever wanted to talk about getting healthier. There's a guy who's there that's committed to helping her, and I was too damn scared to do it. And I was so in my mind about, she's going to think that I'm calling her, unhealthy, or she's going to be nervous because I'm a Black guy walking up to her in the middle of a store. Our brains have this ability to just create these stories that haven't even happened yet. And I was sort of just following her. I was trailing her around the store like a weirdo, trying to muster up the courage to actually say something to her. And I walked out of the store without saying anything. And I sat in the car, and my wife sort of ushered me back in, go talk to her. This is what you're here for. And I went back inside and I couldn't find her. And I came back out to the car. See, and that's why this is the emotional chapter, because now it's springing up again. But I came to the car and I just bawled my eyes out. And wife thought I was crying because I sort of missed an opportunity to talk to the woman. And I was crying because I was so tired of being afraid and letting this thing run my life. And I was done with it. And so I said, no more. And so now what I've learned to do is to take that same fear and move it into faith. Because what happens is if I create these stories out in the future that haven't even happened yet, that limit me, that is the same thing when I'm faithful. I'm creating these stories out in the future that's now going to propel me as rocket fuel. And so now I operate from faith. I'm so passionate about these things, and I don't think about things going wrong. I have faith that they are going to go right. And so when these thoughts come up and they say, hey, don't do that, don't say that, don't make that investment, I say, nope. And now I switch it, and now I operate from faith. And that has propelled me like nobody's business. And so fear and faith it takes the same things. And so now I choose which one I want to govern my life. And before, I would be stuck. I'd be stuck in so many ways. Like the other day, I had to have a rather challenging conversation with my wife. And the same thing is, I have faith that this conversation is going to be an uplifting, a beautiful conversation that's going to help propel our relationship to another level. And so now I go have the dang conversation, even though I'm nervous to have it. So what? I break through and I go and do it. And so this is really what I see. It's the number one thing out of all these things that I write about and I talk about. This is the number one or two things that hold people back in their lives is their ability to let fear run them. And about 5 years ago, I just said, I'm done with that. And I'm not going to operate. I'm not going to play that game anymore, Priscilla. Like I'm going to take this same weird feeling that I have, and now I'm going to take this energy and use it for good.
Oh my goodness, that is the best lesson ever because I think all of us operate out of fear, most of us. And we don't do the things that we really want to do because of fear. And I love what you say to us in our coaching community. Suspend all fear and thinking and just go. Just do it, right? Action is the antidote for fear. And that's what I have learned. And it is so, so true. And you just got to push past those things and just do little bits of action. And then what I find, Jamil, is when I do even something little, get a little bit past my fear, I feel so darn good. And then that
Yeah.
gives a little confidence and to take that next step, right? So that's one of my favorite things that I've learned from you is all about push past that fear because it doesn't serve us well at all. And I loved hearing about when that shift occurred for you. And you just like made a decision, like, dang it, I missed that opportunity with that woman in Walmart. And I bet you're never going to miss an opportunity like that again.
No, and if I do, it won't be because I'm scared.
Right. There you go. There you go. Okay. Moving on. I definitely want to get to a couple of these things. So I want to talk about shift 8, Jamil, because it's all talking about telling your story. Okay. And
Mhm.
so many of us, we're embarrassed about our stories. We are not only embarrassed, but we just want to sweep it under the carpet. We don't want to address what's happened in our life, the painful situations that have happened in our life. We don't want to let on that we've had these things happen in our life because we want to put on this facade that everything's great. Everything's great with my life. And one of the best things that I have learned in my health coaching business and through you and what we're taught is that when you tell your story, there's so much freedom in that. And what it really does is it helps other people. So you don't want to keep that to yourself. You want to tell your story, but there's a reason behind it, and that is to help other people. So can you tell us a little bit about why it's important to share your story and why you say that freedom lies on the other side of sharing your authentic story?
Yeah, it's important because human beings are more alike than we are different. And one of the things that happens is many of us are walking around and we're all jacked up because we think we're the only ones, Priscilla. I mean, it, everyone can see that who's actually looking. And so we have these things again that hold us back. And one of those things is I'm not enough. When you start to peel that onion back and you get down to the rooty tooty, fresh and fruity, for most people is I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And so as we start to share our stories, are the pain, the victories, the sufferings, the winnings, the all of it. What it does is it allows another human being to see that, oh, I'm not the only one. Like that's not just me. And it's so important for breakthrough, and it's so important for overall communities. One of the most powerful things about the community that you and I are in is that people openly share their story. And when they do, we say, wow. Uh, uh, in such a way, we get validated, we get inspired, we get motivated, we get educated. For example, I have some of the most brilliant friends, Priscilla. The big problem is they keep their brilliance to themselves. It's not helping anyone. And they say, well, I don't want people to think that I'm boastful. And it actually ought to be the other way around. You want people to think that you're a giver, not the other way around. You don't want to be a keeper. You don't want to be a keeper of great information or a great story or a great triumph or a great pain. You want to give. And what I learned in my journey is those that give much get much. And the things that you start to get now is actually peace, joy, fulfillment, happiness, tranquility. Because when we're in a state of giving, then not only biologically does that do something to us through endorphins and dopamine and all these things, but also it inspires other people to give. This is how we can start to change communities. The big problem was I wasn't willing to do that. You know, I want to keep my stuff to myself. Even writing this book, I could have kept this to myself. Do you know how many people would not be affected? I mean, thousands of people already. I could have just kept my story to myself and just said, this is Jamil. Let me keep it, let me just keep it wrapped up here. I could have kept my transformation, my physical transformation to myself. There would be tens and 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 tens of thousands of people that wouldn't have transformation. I could have kept my challenges of my marriage to myself, but then other people who are going through the same challenges wouldn't have had the information and wouldn't have the tools to actually resurrect themselves. When I wrote The Richest Man in Direct Sales, I could have kept how we start building wealth to myself. I could have kept that just for me and my kids. But what good does that do to society? And am I just here for myself? Or am I here to actually make this place better? And so it's actually the other way around. When we keep our stories to ourselves, this is selfishness. The way we start to help our communities is now to share, share, share. And so as I started sharing a little bit more, I started breaking out of that fear and sharing a little bit more. I started to become a little bit more authentic. I started realizing how this was helping people find their own freedom. So this is why I say on the other side of your story, whether you believe it's an important story or not, it is, because human beings are more alike than we are different. And so on the other side of your story lies great freedom for someone else. It's called a breakthrough. It's called a connection. It's called a shift.
I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. And it is wonderful to be able to just share our stories. And there is true freedom in that. And when you can help someone else using the crap that you've been through and gotten through on the other side, there is no greater fulfillment than that. Because otherwise, what good was it? Right? If you can't use that horrible thing that happened to you that you got past to help other people, I don't know. I just see that as being so limited. So, Jamil, the fact that you have shared your story and the fact that you have written this awesome book and that you haven't just kept that to yourself, it is very true. You have helped thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives. And I am so blessed to be one of those. Because you certainly have been such a great friend. And I do remember all of our, Rose Bowl walks and stuff like that. And people would say, "Oh, would you guys talk about business or something like that?" I'm like, no, we just kind of chatted about life and our lives. And, so we have that friendship. And I'm so grateful to you for that. And I can say to anybody that is watching this that, Jamil, you are a man of integrity, and I am honored and very blessed to know you. But I have one other just burning question, if I can ask you, okay? And I'm just, ever since I read this, I'm intrigued. Will you share with us your dedication in the
I
book?
knew you were going to ask that.
Oh my gosh, I am wanting to know. So, okay, this is what you say. Darling Amanda, thank you for saying no. And everyone, of course, expects when you write this, it's going to be thank you for saying yes. So this is what I've been dying to know what that dedication is all about.
Yeah. So, okay. So we didn't really get into how I got here, what my background was and how I got to this place. But part of that story was I talked about the 2-year depression, but I didn't talk about the onslaught of that and how that happened. And so how that happened was, I got married, and within a year or so of being married, I didn't want to be married anymore. And so I sort of had one foot out of the door, at least mentally. And then we found out we were pregnant, and I didn't want the pregnancy. I didn't want to be a father, and I didn't want to be married. And I asked my wife, Amanda, if she would be willing to have an abortion, and she said no. And from her saying no, remember, why is this happening to me? Why is she trying to ruin my life? Why is she trying to dictate my actions and how the rest of my life is going to be? It's a really weak mindset, but I didn't know the things that I know now. And so I fell into a depression, and it was difficult. And I was resentful, and she was resentful, obviously, as she should have been. It's probably not something that someone should ask a woman to do. And anyway, obviously, looking back on that now, one of the biggest blessings is that she did say no, because that forced me to stay, to make a decision to be the father to my kids that I don't feel like my father was to his children, and to work very hard with leveling up and becoming differently. And so now, obviously 9 years later, her saying no has become by far the biggest blessing in my life, because it put me on the path of resurrection and transformation.
What a beautiful dedication. I love that story behind that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm so glad that I asked you that. Jamil, it has been a true honor. I want to mention, okay, this book, The 12 Shifts, it truly is life-changing. And so how can, this is available on Amazon, right? The 12 Shifts.
Mhm.
And I got to say that I have bought multiple copies, and this is what people are getting for Christmas. This is my Christmas gift to others. That's how much, and I don't do that. I don't really give books as presents, but that's how much I feel that the book is such an amazing thing for anybody to read. And so I want to encourage anybody that's watching to absolutely buy the 12 Shifts. It'll change your life. And you've heard from Jamil, the man himself. Thank you so much. Is there any last word that you'd like to say to people that are listening, Jamil?
No, just that I appreciate you. I think you're amazing and phenomenal, and I thank you for doing this. And I labored over writing this book. Initially I didn't know if it would be good, um, but I know this book isn't my book. This was a book that was written through me, and I know that from all of the messages that I get. And so I encourage people to get it. I encourage them to get multiple copies and to pass it around, because it really is it really is a love letter. It's a book of fulfillment, in all crevices of our lives. And it's just really tastefully done. It's to me, I always say this, and I'm not lying. You can see behind me, I've studied so many books. This book is within my top 5 books that I have ever read.
I agree. I agree, Jamil. It's phenomenal. And I am not just saying that. So
I
thank
know,
you
it's pretty
from the
good.
bottom of my heart. This was such a pleasure and a joy. Jamil, I love you, my friend. And I know that everybody that hears this is going to get so much value from this. So thank you. Have a blessed rest of the day.
Bye, guys. Thank you.